Welcome back to the I Am Passionate podcast. It's your host, Jaren Smith. I hope you all are doing well. It's a big week for the NFL this week with Thanksgiving football just about 12 hours away. I am recording this episode on Thanksgiving Eve, for lack of better words, but this is a huge week in the NFL regular season. We're going into week 13 and kind of just wanting to talk about my overall prediction record because the last time I did it was after week 7, and then I had a 63-42-1 record. The one coming from the Packers and Cowboys tie, which technically you could argue that that's a loss for my prediction record because I would have said I said the Packers would win that game, but they ended up losing. But kind of talking about weeks 8 through 12 real quick in terms of overall, week 8 I was 8-7. This is also the other week where you could argue that, because I gave two predictions for that game where you could argue I was 8-7 or 9-6, but for today's purposes, we're gonna say I was 8-7 for that, week. 9-5 in week 9, 10-5 in week 10, 11-5, 11-4 in week 11, and last week I was 9-5. For last week, my losses came from the Bills, the Colts, the Raiders, the Cardinals, and the Eagles. The most surprising loss, out of those teams, I kind of would say the Colts, simply just because I feel like in their game against Kansas City, they were, in control of most of that game. Then just in the fourth quarter, they just simply forgot how to play football. Like, I believe in the fourth quarter, the Chiefs, fourth quarter / overtime, the Chiefs outgained the Colts, like basically 300 yards to 18 yards. The last four Colts drives, they did not get a single first down. They were 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. And the other one I would probably say is the Eagles, simply just because in the first half they were playing, they were playing pretty well. And just in the second half, that offense could not do anything. And yeah, no, those were, the two surprising losses. Then in the wins, we have Seattle, the Packers, Ravens, the Lions, the Bears, the Patriots, the Falcons, the Rams, and the 49ers. I thought the Rams were the most surprising, not because of a bad reason. I didn't expect them to put BTA to the Bucks. I didn't think it was going to be that bad. So after 12 games, my record is 109, 68, and 1. And, by the time of, the Super Bowl, I will give you an exact count for my records. I would take into consideration, the Packers and Cowboys tie, and then the Bears and Ravens game. Those are games I will take into account when predicting my final record, because I believe there's like 265 total regular season games. And so obviously I need to make sure that my total adds to 265. Because doing some quick math right now, 109 plus 68, that's 177. And the one that says 178. So again, the math might be slightly off. And, I want to make sure that it is accurate. And the best way I can do that is going back, checking out all my notes, listening to each episode, making sure that like, hey, this is who I would say would win. And this is, and kind of tallying it up that way just to double check. And so the top games in week 11, I got to say that Cowboys and Eagles game was number one. Because after the first half, I thought the Eagles were going to I thought it was going to be BTA, but if anything, it was reverse BTA, where the Cowboys, first that hit on Xavier Gibson, on the return of the forced fumble, that was insane, which I understand that led to nothing. That did not lead to anything. But the Eagles, they could not do anything in that second half, which I think that this season, that if anything is their downfall, it might be their offense. Like, they have the personnel to do it. I just don't know what's holding them back, so to speak. And I think if the Eagles meet up with the Rams again in the postseason, I don't know if I trust the Eagles' offense to put up. I trust the Eagles' defense to slow down the Rams, but there's only so much that defense can do to slow them down. Eventually, I think a team like the Rams could, push through and, get the win. Second best game of week 12, I'm sorry, I would say is the Colts versus the Chiefs. I thought the Chiefs, if they were going to lose that game, I thought their season was going to be over. But the Colts were in control of the game pretty much up until the fourth quarter, when, like I mentioned before, they just forgot how to play football. And the Chiefs, they didn't play amazing, considering that, most of their damage, basically all of their damage came in the fourth quarter. But, hey, it ain't over until it's over. Third best, I will say the Steelers versus Bears. Even though Aaron Rodgers did not play in this game, I thought it was a pretty good game overall. And I got a little scared early when Caleb Williams took that sack in the red zone, which the Steelers basically recovered the ball for a touchdown. I was getting a little scared early, but like the Bears offense, they didn't really let that get to them. They were able to make some plays, and then down the stretch, the Bears defense, basically clutched up. Jaquan Brisker, he got that pass deflection, which even if he didn't, not 100% sure who Mason Rudolph was throwing to was going to make it to the sticks, but good job, Chicago Bears defense. The fourth best game of the week, I'm going to say the Lions versus the Giants. I really thought the Giants were going to lose this game by 50 before, the game set started, but they almost won. Jameis Winston is the true definition of a gunslinger. He really, really is. He really is. And for the Lions, their offense does not use Jameson Williams, and they do not use David Montgomery enough. Like David Montgomery, like Kevin has said it, in like a group chat between me, Kevin, and my brother. Kevin had said it that David Montgomery has basically been phased out of the Lions offense. It is pretty much the Jahmyr Gibbs show, which he's not wrong. And I feel like Jameson Williams is not used enough either, because last week was his second week that he did not have a single catch. And I think a guy of his skill set, he's, got game breaking speed. He's somebody that should get, at least, 3 or 4 deep balls a game just because of how fast he is. And, he's a good receiver. Like, he can create separation. And, when he's in space, like most people on the field, like he's the fastest guy on the field most of the time. Like he can't be caught. I don't know, man. I don't know. And then, the last game, the Texans versus the Bills. I watched a replay of the original game simply just because, I was scheduled, to work. So, I went back, watched the game from start to finish. And the Texans defense, man, they're insane. Like, I honestly think they're the best defense in football. If you were to look up at the numbers, yes, the Denver defense is going to be pretty much at the top of every category you want to be at the top of. But the thing is, at least despite that the Broncos offense is inconsistent, the Broncos, they have the offensive potential. Houston, since basically CJ Stroud's rookie year, they have not really had an offense. They've been affected by injury, just that offense. And the funny thing is, everybody thought CJ Stroud was going to take a huge leap in year 2, and he kind of regressed because it was like that offense got figured out on separate than, just being banged up. And so, yeah, that Texans defense has had to play perfect every single game of this season. The Bills, Denver, I'm miss saying teams all over. Denver's defense has not had to play perfect all year round because, they have their offense to bail them out from time to time. But enough about that. Before we get started into the Week 13 games, which AKA is the start of Thanksgiving, I hope you all have an amazing Thanksgiving because this episode will come out Thanksgiving morning. And let me know down below in the comments, what is your favorite Thanksgiving dish? What are you thankful for? Things of that nature. This year, my answer for what am I thankful for? I'll be honest, it's a bit more of a selfish reason. I'm more just thankful for just myself. I feel like I put in a lot of work on the day-to-day, the week-to-week, whether, I think a lot of it goes behind the scenes of what I do, like not even just for this podcast, but just in life in general. And not everybody sees it, and that's okay, because I know that my hard work will, eventually be recognized on a bigger scale, which even if it doesn't get recognized on a bigger scale, I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, I can live with the fact that I'm working my butt off each and every day on the things that I do. And I think that's what's mostly important. So this year, I'm thankful for myself. Of course, I'm thankful for my family. Of course, I'm thankful for my friends, my loved ones. I'm very thankful for my girlfriend. Thankful for, everybody, who falls in one of those things that I just said. And for the food, of course, I'm thankful for the food. I'm Jaren. All of you know me as the guy who eats for like 2-3 people. My favorite Thanksgiving dish, it's a tie between the turkey / mac and cheese. Like, yes, people have made dry turkey in the past before. I can remember a dry turkey, but overall, I feel like turkey has been like pretty good, in my family on Thanksgiving. My least favorite Thanksgiving dish is definitely the cranberry sauce. Like, you cannot convince me that cranberry sauce is basically not for like, I'm 24 years old. So like the only people I know that like cranberry sauce are basically like my grandparents. And that's on like both sides of my family. Like my mom's side and my dad's side. It is quite literally only them. Like Jalen, Cameron, which those are my older siblings. If one of y'all like cranberry sauce and I just don't know it, You better not let me catch you with some cranberry sauce because I'm gonna throw that mug in the garbage. I'll just let you know that right now. And if I am talking a little quieter, which I don't really think I am, but I'm trying to keep the energy up despite, talking a little quieter. So, talking about the first Thanksgiving game of the day, the Packers versus the Lions. This is a huge NFC North showdown, and Bears fans, I believe, will be watching this closely. And I kind of was talking to my dad about this a little bit earlier, because like his response was that he wants both teams to lose. But if you're a Bears fan watching this game, even though that it should be illegal to do this, you should root for the Packers, simply just because the Bears still have to play the Packers twice. And the Bears they have to play the Lions one more time. So I kind of think the Bears have a better chance at knocking the Packers off both times compared to stealing a win against the Lions, which I mean the Lions are kind of up and down each and every week. In the Packers, I don't think they're as strong as they were, in years past or the beginning of the seasons, but it's almost like the Bears, again, the Packers, it's just like they're cursed. It's just like a completely different team, so to speak. But yeah, the Bears, they have a 1-game lead on both teams, but if the Lions win this game, the Bears will be in second, which that's not necessarily a bad thing because obviously they play on Black Friday. So that could easily change. And so for the Lions last week, if it was not for Jahmyr Gibbs, well, first off, Jahmyr Gibbs is the reason why on the Sleeper app my fantasy football season's over. But if it was not for him, the Lions probably would have lost last week against the Giants. Gibbs had over 200 yards receiving, that would have been crazy, 200 yards rushing, and he had 11 catches receiving, which, he is basically the number 2 wide receiver on that team because I still think that Jahmyr Gibbs, I'm saying the wrong people, and I apologize about that. I'm saying, like I said earlier, Jameson Williams, he just is not utilized in the Lions offense. And I think that he is a factor that you just can't necessarily game plan for because the kind of athlete that he is. And, when these two teams played in week 1, it was the Packers defensive line that pretty much changed the game. The Lions didn't really play terrible on offense, but they did not really have a good third down percentage. I think they were 5 for 15 on third down, and they were 3 for 4. Jared Goff only threw 1 interception, but he did get sacked 4 times. And so I think that, for the Packers, they're probably going to want to shorten this game because I think that they're not going to want to play in a longer football game. And plus, Josh Jacobs, he may or may not play. In Detroit, they're looking basically to just Jahmyr Gibbs campaign because I do think he should be considered as one of the top running backs in the league right now because he's just balling. His straight line speed, if he gets ahead of steam going with nobody in front of him, he is pretty tough to stop. He really is. His straight line speed is just insane. But I think the Packers are going to get this one. I genuinely do. 27-24. I think that defense is going to get an interception on Jared Goff, and that's going to kind of seal the game. And I think this is a game that the Lions are going to have a lot of opportunities to get the win. But I think the Packers defense is going to be able to, make, Detroit, maybe kick a field goal or get a 4th down stop, so to speak. 27-24. Moving on to the Chiefs versus the Cowboys, the second game of Thanksgiving. And this is basically a playoff game for both teams because both teams were in bad situations last week, but they're able to, basically adjust, make a comeback win, which the Cowboys' comeback was more impressive to me because the defense is not a strength of the Cowboys, and yet they completely shut down the Eagles' offense. And the Chiefs, I think they're going to be looking to try to start a little faster, considering all their games, all their damage last week came in the fourth quarter / overtime. And I think even against this Cowboys team, I think if they're going to start slow, if the Chiefs start slow, I don't think that's, good because, this Cowboys offense, they can put up some stats like crazy. This is going to shock you all, but I think this game is going to be a close one, 24-20, and I think the Cowboys are going to take this game. I think Quinnen Williams is going to cause problems for Kansas City. I really do. I truly do. And I promise you, Kevin, I know you're probably going to say this. You're probably saying, somebody check my FanDuel account. I ain't got no FanDuel account. Moving on to the final Thanksgiving game of the night, the Bengals versus the Ravens. And I would say that this is probably the game that most people are looking forward to because Joe Burrow will likely be playing in tomorrow night's football game. And I do think it's a desperate move meant to save some people's jobs, which I mean, like, I get. But, like, I think this Bengals team is pretty much going to always stay the same unless they, get a good draft pick and they focus on building up that offensive line and defense. Because those are still their biggest problems. But despite kind of what I think about it being a desperation move, the AFC North is still within reach. The Ravens and Steelers are both 6-5. The Bengals are 3-8. It is very possible that basically whoever wins the AFC North can be a 9-10 win team. It is very possible. And, the Ravens, they've won 5 straight. And, kind of my biggest concern is kind of Lamar Jackson. Since he's come back, he has not really looked the same. You know, um, there is a influencer, he's a Ravens fan. I know his name is, like Yap Matt. And, he'll also like look at the film, not even just for Ravens, but for like other teams. And one of the things that he pointed out is that, Lamar Jackson is not really like taking off and running. Like, by that I mean, yes, Lamar Jackson has, he doesn't really run the way he used to. Also, just because he's evolved as a player. But like some of the film that he showed last week is that Lamar Jackson had basically at least a first down out in front of him. And he's just hesitating until like the very last moment when, like the Jets defender in this instance has kind of like closed the gap. So what could have been, let's just say, a first down was only like a gain of 2. So Lamar Jackson, he might not be fully healthy. I mean, maybe he's just at the point where like he does not want to, have to run, which I understand that, but I also think that's something that you just can't game plan for because he is the best dual threat quarterback of all time, and I can say that unbiasedly. I can get the numbers to back it up. I think there's only 2 other dual threats that kind of come to mind in terms of who I think the greatest are, and that's Cam Newton or Michael Vick. I think stats wise, you can basically throw in Josh Allen and probably Jalen Hurts because of the tush push, but I think Jalen Hurts kind of falls into a different dual threat category in my opinion. And so, what I think is going to be the key to this game, it's going to be the Ravens pass rush. Because the Ravens pass rush is not very good this year. It's not. But what's kind of revived the pass rush is Kyle Hamilton and also, the trading for on the Titans defensive lineman, Tremont Jones. Having Kyle Hamilton closer to the line of scrimmage, it makes it tough for, teams to, block him, to game plan for him. And so I think if Joe Burrow, even if it's Joe Flacco, if either one of them have a lot of time to sit back and throw it to Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, it can be bad for the Ravens because this is the best team that the Ravens, other than the Bears, obviously, but let's just say this is the best team that the Ravens would have played since the Bears. And so I do think that this game is going to be a shootout, and I think Derrick Henry, I think Mark Andrews, I think Isaiah Likely, they're all 3 players who need to have a big game because the Bengals' pass defense, specifically against tight ends, is not good. And Derrick Henry, he made a difference last year against the Bengals, in those 2 games, and so I think he needs to be able to do it again. But give me the Ravens 34-31. We have another Black Friday game this year, the Bears versus the Eagles. And if you own, a Twitter account, I'm sure you know the air quotes alliance between these 2 teams. The Bears are 3-0 in the NFC East, and the Eagles are 3-0 in the NFC North. And so whoever wins, basically they'll have the complete division sweep. And this will affect the NFC playoff picture a lot because, if the Eagles win, because they do own the tiebreaker over the Rams. So this will kind of help them secure the number 1 seed. And the Bears, they necessarily won't have like a tiebreaker over the Rams, but they can apply the pressure to being the number 1 seed because I've been kind of saying this lately is that like before this season, I thought the Bears would be competitive. I thought the Bears would be a team that's like 5-5, 6. I kind of thought record wise they'd be kind of close to what the Ravens currently are today. That's where I thought they were going to be. Like if you would have went back in time, let's just say at the end of the last preseason game going into the regular season, if you would have told me that the Bears are 8-3 and have a good chance at beating the defending, Super Bowl champs, the Philadelphia Eagles, I would have said you're out of your mind. But I think the key to this game is going to be the Bears' offensive line because, the Eagles have Jalen Carter. They have Jordan Davis. I think Ojomo, I can't think of his first name. He's number 90. They got Jalex Hunt. Basically a great pass rush. They've got Zach Bond. They've got N'Kobe Dean. They have Jihad Campbell. That's just the front seven. I understand the secondary is not as good this year, but I don't know if I trust the Bears to, offensive line to kind of hang in there for 4 quarters. Like, I think they'll do a good job. I think they'll win their battles. I think this is going to be a great game regardless because of the regression the Eagles offense has taken. I think that, the Bears, yeah, I think they can compete. I think they can compete. Like, I don't know if this game is gonna, go down like a last second field goal, but I do think that this game is gonna be like fourth quarter, it's in it. Whoever makes the bigger plays in the fourth quarter will win this game. But you know what? I'm gonna be an optimist. I'm going to, well, first, before I say who I think is gonna win, if I'm the Bears, I'm gonna give Caleb some early throws to get him in rhythm and rely on the play action game, because I think that him throwing on the run, I think he's a good enough like escape artist to, get out of, some bad situations that maybe Jordan Davis is breathing down his neck, or Jalen Carter. I want to see him on the move in the pass game to kind of counter the strong Eagles defensive line. Give me the Bears to win this game 20-17. I think people are going to be more concerned about the Eagles, dropping 2 straight. So then moving on to Sunday's games, the Saints versus the Dolphins. This is a bigger game for the Dolphins as, they are in a 2-game winning streak. And I think this is a pretty decent matchup, but I don't know. I feel like this can still be kind of a trap game, even though both teams don't have a good record. I don't have much to say about the Saints, really, but give me Miami to win this one 23-16. So for the Texans versus the Colts, this is a huge game in the AFC South. The Texans are coming alive at the right time, considering with, their defense, how good it is. They made the Bills' life basically a living hell last week, and I think they have the chance to do that again. I don't know. Division games, for a lot of teams, they're always pretty tough. And the Colts last week, they just did not finish the football game. They did not. I had said last week that I thought it was going to be a pretty big game, simply just because, I feel like you can truly separate yourself as a true contender in the AFC if you beat Kansas City. And they did not, not do that, considering themselves in their shoes. I think this game is going to be decided by like field position, simply just because both of these teams have good defenses. But I think the Texans are going to win this one 21-17. I think the, scared button is going to, the red alarms are going to be happening in the Colts facilities. Moving on to the Falcons versus the Jets. Kirk Cousins played well last week, against the Saints, and I think he has another friendly matchup against the Jets. Drake London, is kind of he's having some knee issues, and, he might not play, but I think if he doesn't, I don't think it's going to be, the end all be all. But the Falcons as a whole, they're in the blender. Obviously, Penix is done for the year. They don't even own their first round pick for the draft for, this season. Rams do. And the Jets, they played Tyrod Taylor, and that did, help their offense a little bit. Tyrod Taylor threw for about 20 yards against the Ravens last week, which the Jets haven't really done that all that often. But I'm going to take the Falcons to win this one 24-13. The game I'm highlighting for the week, which I will at least highlight for at least this week and maybe one more week. 49ers versus the Browns. Shedeur Sanders, I think he played well against the Raiders last week. And, his pass to Isaiah Bond, I think, was the best pass play the Browns have had this season. And I think that the Browns this week, they should try to rely more on the ground game just because of how good the 49ers, defensive scheme is. And, young quarterbacks struggle against, like Bryce Young, for example. I understand that Bryce Young was the first overall pick and Shedeur was the 5th round pick. But if the first overall pick struggled that much against the 49ers defense that's filled with backups, filled with injuries, I would not be surprised if Shedeur Sanders struggled just as much, if not more. Even though the Shedeur Sanders was a first round talent. But with outside of Brock Purdy, though, the 49ers did look good against the Panthers. And I kind of thought the game was going to get out of hand considering all the interceptions earlier, but the defense bailed them out. Give me the 49ers to win this game 24-14. Rams versus the Panthers. I think the Rams are the best team in the NFL right now, and Matthew Stafford is playing some of the best football of his career. I didn't even know that Devontae Adams was leading the NFL in touchdowns, which I think, like, for a receiver, which I thought was crazy. And Puka Nacua, before he had gotten injured, he was on pace for a crazy season, which he's still having a crazy season. And the defense is playing amazing. And I know that the phrase, as long as they stay healthy, applies to every team. But I think that, as long as, they pretty much kind of keep their current formula and along with staying healthy, I think they can win it all. And the Panthers defense is good, man. I don't think that they're going to let up too many big plays against the Rams, believe it or not. The Panthers defense, they kept them in that game on Monday night. They did. Their offense, though, they just could not get anything moving. I think the Rams are going to win 27-10, but it's not going to be a clean 27 points. Like, there's going to be a lot of punts. I think there might be, who knows? I think the Panthers have the potential to maybe get an interception, which Matthew Stafford hasn't thrown an interception in like 2 months? Or 20 something touchdowns? I have no idea. Exactly. But I know it's been a while since Matthew Stafford has thrown his last interception. Moving on to the Jags and Titans. Cam Ward played really well last week. He did. I don't think it's going to be talked about as much considering just how bad the Titans are. And I think his best quality right now is his ability to extend some plays because he had thrown some passes last week that I thought were incredible. And the Titans, they got to build the proper offense around, them. And I don't think I'll have much to say about the Titans for the rest of this season just because, their season is kind of already to the wayside. And the Jags, I thought they were going to lose last week. I did think that the game was going to be close. I thought they were going to lose last week, but they were able to take care of business. I think they're going to be in another close game because this is a division matchup. Give me the Jags to win 24-21. Cardinals versus the Bucks. Baker Mayfield left last week with a left shoulder injury. I'm sure we all know this. And to be honest, I thought it was way worse than it actually is. And the Bucks haven't really ruled him out just yet. And I feel like, Baker Mayfield and his personality, his play type, if he plays, he's going to go out there like nothing's wrong. Which I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing because you don't want it to be worse considering that you're trying to make a deep playoff run. And the Cardinals, they're a weird team. I kind of feel the same way I feel about the Titans. I kind of feel about them. I don't really have much to say, but I do wonder if their head coach Jonathan Gannon is on the hot seat. And they haven't really done much with him as their head coach, and I wonder that are the Cardinals basically after this year are they going to go on a rebuild? Is Kyler Murray going to be on the roster for much longer? I have no idea. But give me the Bucks to win this game 20-13. Vikings versus Seattle. This is the Sam Darnold Bowl. My question, which I've asked a lot, were the Vikings justified in letting Sam Darnold go? My answer to that question is I don't think they were. But this game I think is going to determine just how well, this signing Sam Darnold will go for Seattle. And also, JSN is having, a crazy season. I believe he already set the single season record for Seattle's receiving yards, which is already crazy. He's having basically the best season a Seattle wide receiver's ever had, which is insane. And for the Vikings, if I'm Seattle's defense, I'm not really scared of the Vikings because, the offense, JJ McCarthy, he threw 87 yards and 2 picks last week. And somebody on social media basically posted the stats of some of the last few quarterbacks that, Justin Jefferson had put up some numbers with. It was obviously, Kirk Cousins, it was Sam Darnold, it had Nick Mullins, and then JJ McCarthy. Nick Mullins was thrown on there because of also the smaller sample size. And with Nick Mullins, Sam Darnold, and Kirk Cousins, basically JJ McCarthy was averaging about 100 yards. With JJ McCarthy, he's averaging 53. The production is just significantly worse with them. So I think after this game, you're going to be hearing a lot of comments that, JJ McCarthy might have been the wrong pick, which I kind of do agree. Give me Seattle to win this one pretty easily, 38-10. Bills versus Steelers. Both of these teams need this game, and this could affect the potential AFC wildcard picture. The Bills lost in a tough game last week. The Steelers lost in a tough game last week. The Steelers are trying to, we'll say, kind of outlast the Ravens because they had a big lead when the Ravens are 1-5, and now they're tied for first. And the Bills, they're trying to catch up to the Patriots. And I think that it's possible Aaron Rodgers plays this week, but if not, I imagine that, Mason Rudolph will play this game. And I think the Steelers should try to run the ball a lot because the Bills' run defense is not very good. So I would be expecting a heavy dose of Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell. But I think the Bills are going to win this game 28-24. Moving on to the Raiders versus the Chargers. Really, all I have to say about the Raiders is they fired Chip Kelly, which, they've had the second worst offense this year. And I didn't expect the Raiders to do all that much this season because there's too many empty holes in their roster. And the Chargers, they had a bye week. I don't really have much to say about them. They're just looking to close the gap on the Broncos. Give me the Chargers to win this one 28-27. Moving on to the Broncos versus the Commanders, the Sunday Night Football game. The Broncos, I talked about it earlier, they're a very inconsistent offense, which makes me concerned for them come playoff time. And this could give the Commanders some life, that how inconsistent their offense is. And I think the Broncos defense will definitely give, Marcus Mariota a rough time. So maybe the offense won't need to do too much. But also Jaden Daniels has been practicing. But is there a point? I'm saying that because it's not like the Commanders are competing for the playoffs right now. They shouldn't even be in the hunt. But Jaden Daniels, he's been banged up all this year. And I understand that if I was in these shoes, I'd be practicing trying to play too. But I think that, he needs to focus more so on, not taking these hits. I think that's just the next step, because I think he's a great passer. I think he's a good decision maker. But I think the hits that he takes up, I think that's quite literally the only knock I have on him right now. He's just taking too many hits this year. As a rookie, I didn't really see him taking as many hits. Give me the Broncos to win this game 24-10. And then the Monday Night Football game, the Giants versus the Patriots. This could be a trap game, just considering the Giants are out of the playoff picture. And, this is a perfect opportunity to play spoiler against basically the hottest team in the NFL right now, outside of the Rams. Patriots have won 9 in a row. Drake May in the past looked good last week. They were losing early and bounced back, with good defense and, controlling the clock and, kind of responding to adversity early. That was another thought I had about, this Patriots team. I just was not too sure if, how they would respond to trailing early. And last week, they responded well. So really, that is about it for the Thanksgiving edition of the I Am Passionate podcast. It's your host, Jaren Smith. I hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving, and I'll see you next time.